Hey everyone, we hear the word burnout thrown around all the time, right? It's kind of become this catch all for feeling tired or stressed. But today, we're going to go way beyond the buzzword to really understand what's happening under the surface when that inner spark starts to fade.
So let me just ask you something. Have you ever had that feeling where, on the outside, you're hitting your deadlines, you're showing up, you're keeping it all together, but on the inside, it feels like you're slowly, quietly cracking under the pressure? Well, there's actually a term for that experience. It's called quiet cracking. It's that invisible stage of burnout where your performance is still holding up, but all the motivation and the resilience that used to power you, it's all starting to unravel in silence. It's not some big dramatic collapse. It's more like a slow, quiet leak of your inner energy. To really get a handle on burnout, we first have to separate it from the things it gets confused with all the time. So let's start by defining what burnout is, and maybe just as important, what it isn't. Okay, so what's really fascinating here is the core difference. Think about it. Stress is all about too much pressure, too many demands, and it leads to this feeling of urgency, of hyperactivity. Burnout, though, that's about too little. Too little motivation, too little care. It's a state of feeling completely depleted and used up, not just overwhelmed. And here is another absolutely critical distinction. Burnout and depression can sometimes look similar on the surface, but burnout is typically situational. It's tied to one specific area, like your job. Depression, on the other hand, is a pervasive medical illness. It colors every part of your life, and it really requires professional treatment. It's just a huge difference to understand. For the longest time, the way we all talked about burnout was based on a model that, well, we now know was incomplete. It turns out the classic definition was missing some really crucial pieces of the puzzle. So modern science now gives us a much clearer four-dimensional picture. We're all pretty familiar with exhaustion, that deep, deep loss of energy, and mental distance, which is basically cynicism. But the real insight is in these last two. Cognitive impairment, which messes with your focus and memory, and emotional impairment, which makes it super hard to regulate your feelings. These were the missing pieces, and they give us a much, much more complete understanding of what's really going on. All right, so now that we have a clearer definition, it's really important to get that burnout doesn't show up the same way for everybody. It can actually manifest in a few pretty distinct patterns, all depending on the person and their environment. So let's look at three common types. First, you've got overload burnout, that frantic, nonstop chase for success, even if it costs you your health. Then there's under-challenged burnout, which is driven by boredom and feeling stuck, and that leads to cynicism. And finally, neglect burnout, where this feeling of total helplessness takes over because you just feel like you can't keep up. See if any of those sound familiar. And this right here brings us to a huge paradox. For so many high achievers, burnout is completely invisible from the outside. They're wearing this mask of high performance, but behind it, there's a total systemic collapse happening, emotionally, physically, and cognitively. It's not just a bad week, it's an absolutely unsustainable cost. And for leaders, this risk is amplified by a whole unique set of pressures. The constant weight of making these high-stakes decisions, being under public scrutiny, and that really dangerous feeling that you're irreplaceable. You add the isolation that so often comes with being at the top, and man, you have a perfect recipe for burnout. Okay, so we've defined burnout, we've looked at the different ways it can show up. Now let's make this a little more personal. This next section is a chance for a quick, really honest self-reflection. This is the question in today's work culture, isn't it? There's such a fine line between consciously setting boundaries to protect your energy, and on the other hand, quietly burning out, where you're pulling back because you've just lost the ability to care. See, one is a choice, and the other is a symptom. So just take a second here and be really honest with yourself about these signs. Do you feel disconnected from the impact of what you do? Do you wake up feeling exhausted, even when you've gotten a full night's sleep? If a few of these are feeling familiar, it could definitely be a sign of burnout. And please, pay special attention to that last one. If working less isn't restoring your energy, the problem is almost certainly deeper than just being tired. So if any of this is hitting home, the single most important thing I want you to know is that burnout is not a life sentence. It's a signal, a really powerful one. So let's talk about the path to recovery. So why doesn't a 2-week vacation actually fix deep burnout? Well, it's because it's not just about being tired. Your nervous system has literally rewired itself to treat chaos and high stress as its normal state. as its baseline. True recovery needs more than just a temporary break. It requires a total recalibration. So where do you even start? First, you have to name it. Turn that vague fog into a clear signal just by acknowledging what you're feeling. Second, find the friction. Get really specific about what tasks and situations drain you. Third, find moments of meaning, even in small ways. And finally, ask for better. And this isn't about asking for less work. It's about asking for more clarity, more useful feedback, and better alignment with your goals. I really want to leave you with this powerful idea. Burnout is not a reflection of your worth, or your strength, or your commitment. It is not a personal failure. It is simply a signal that the system you're operating in, your environment, your workload, your habits, it's just not sustainable for you anymore. And that brings us to our final question for you. Just forget about a massive overhaul for a minute. Based on everything we've talked about, what is one small, manageable thing you can do today, like right now, to start reclaiming just a little piece of your energy? Thanks so much for diving into this with me.
If this touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with your family. Save this for more meaningful content ahead.